The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell starts right now. Hey, Lawrence.
Hey, Jen, we have a quorum. We have 2 United States senators. We have 1 member of the House of Representatives. They're waiting patiently, but I don't want to make them wait too long.
Good. Please don't. Look forward to hearing what they have to say.
We're going to get right to it. Thanks, Jen.
Thank you.
A whole civilization will die tonight. Hitler never said that. No head of state in the history of the world ever said that. Civilization had to wait literally thousands of years until today, April 7th, 2026, at 8:06 a.m., for a head of state to say and threaten a whole civilization will die tonight. No cruel king ever threatened that. No mass murdering tyrant anywhere in the world ever said that or even thought it was possible. And so the United States of America now must live with the permanent stain on our history that we are the only country in the world who has produced a head of state who said a whole civilization will die tonight. And with that statement, it could not be more tragically clear now that a whole civilization has already died. The whole civilization, beginning with the model of the British Parliament, leading to the first independent American government formed under the Articles of Confederation, followed by the Constitution that wrote the presidency into existence, and nearly 250 years of the American presidency, all of that whole civilization forming the presidency died with the elevation of Donald Trump to the presidency a second time, proving that it wasn't just an electoral college accident the first time. The country that claimed so self-righteously to be the conscience of the world, and sometimes, in some ways, came very close to reaching that ideal, elected a president who had been convicted of business fraud and covering up payments to a porn star in a failed attempt to keep her quiet about his sexual relationship with her while his third wife was still nursing his youngest child. A man who was indicted and criminally charged with violations of the Espionage Act and illegal possession of classified documents, a man who was indicted for conspiracy against the United States of America, for trying to overthrow a presidential election when that man was elected president of the United States the second time. The very fabric of the civilization that knitted the Constitution into an acceptable form of government for 13 states with varying and sometimes conflicting interests, and delivered a presidency often occupied by the most admired person in the country, and always occupied by someone who lived in awe of the civilization that produced the presidency, until Donald Trump. This is what the collapse of a civilization looks like. The most ignorant person ever to appear on a presidential ballot, taking an oath that he could not possibly understand or ever follow. We Americans all have varying degrees of admiration for individual presidents, varying degrees of enthusiasm, positive and negative, about individual presidents. But even when we lived in full disagreement with a current president of the United States, we never feared him. And even when we lived in constant disagreement with a president of the United States, it remained effortless for most of us to retain our respect and even awe for the presidency itself. And that is what has died. When we pledged allegiance to the flag every morning at St. Brendan's Elementary School in Boston with a photograph of the President of the United States beside the flag, it felt the same, whether the president was a Republican or a Democrat. I don't know what they said in Catholic schools in America yesterday, in elementary schools or high schools, about the social media greeting the President of the United States gave to the world on Easter Sunday at 8:03 a.m. when he screamed the worst kind of profanity you can scream in print, threatening to destroy every power plant and every bridge in Iran, thereby promising to commit a war crime while ridiculing the religion of the people he intended to kill with those bombs. I don't know what they could have said in those schools. What could the teachers have said about that? I loved being a public school teacher at the beginning of my career, but I have no idea what I would say or could say to the elementary school students and high school students in Boston that I had in my classrooms if I had to speak to them this week with this president. 44 minutes after Donald Trump said this morning a whole civilization will die tonight and never be brought back again, they rang the bell on Wall Street to open the markets, and no one cared that the president had threatened a whole civilization because Wall Street knew he would back down. They've invented a phrase for that, to predict that. They expect that. They expect Donald Trump to back down. They expect Donald Trump to surrender on tariffs and everything else. And so it was a normal day of trading on Wall Street, while everyone there knew that Donald Trump had announced an 8 p.m. Tuesday night deadline tonight for Iran to open the Strait of Hormuz, or he would blow up everything he could in Iran. As he put it, a whole civilization will die tonight. Wall Street knew those words were empty. As poisonous and insane and criminal as those words are, Wall Street was right to believe those words were empty and that Donald Trump would not actually go through with the full insanity of his threat. But the words themselves actually do fit the description of a war crime. Just the words themselves, just the threat, that is against the law. Article 51 of the Geneva Conventions, which has been adopted by the United States as law that applies to everyone in the United States, including the president, says acts or threats of violence, the primary purpose of which is to spread terror among the civilian population, are prohibited. Threats like that are prohibited. They are against the law. They are a war crime. What Donald Trump said was a war crime. What Donald Trump did was try to terrorize not just the Iranian regime with his empty threats, but the entire population of Iran, all 91 million people. He wanted them to believe he was going to kill them all, so that they would then rise up today against the regime and overthrow their government and then instantly make peace with Donald Trump. A version of that fantasy was actually predicted by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in a meeting in the Situation Room in February, described in important new reporting in the New York Times today by Maggie Haberman and Jonathan Swan. The Netanyahu presentation about how successful an American and Israeli war against Iran could be was described to Donald Trump after the meeting by his CIA director as farcical, which, according to the Times reporting, Marco Rubio had to translate for Donald Trump into a profane word that Donald Trump uses publicly all the time, because Donald Trump couldn't possibly know what farcical means. Marco Rubio knew that. He knew it had to be translated. The New York Times reporting makes it very clear now that the people who have been alleging that Benjamin Netanyahu talked Donald Trump into this war now have tremendous support for that position, according to sources within the Trump government and possibly the Israeli government. The Times does not reveal the sources, but does include details in the Situation Room that can only be described by Trump people who were actually in that room and then secretly revealed it to the New York Times. Vice President J.D. Vance emerges from the reporting as the only clear opponent of Donald Trump's war in meetings with Donald Trump. The rest of Donald Trump's advisors and cabinet were clearly afraid to take a position that Donald Trump might not like. And so Marco Rubio, who was in the room as both Secretary of State and National Security Advisor, has proved himself by this reporting to be the worst National Security Advisor in history, who gave the president no advice about what to do, no advice about whether he should go to war or not go to war. Right-wing provocateur and Trump voter Tucker Carlson is quoted in the reporting in a telephone conversation with Donald Trump, which is an indication that Tucker Carlson may well be one of the sources for this reporting. It was just a discussion between those two people, so the version of that discussion would have to come from one of them. In a discussion about going to war in Iran, the Times reports, a couple of weeks before the war began, Mr. Trump, who had known Mr. Carlson for years, tried to reassure him over the phone. "I know you're worried about it, but it's going to be okay," the president said. Mr. Carlson asked how he knew. "Because it always is," Mr. Trump replied. The rank stupidity of Donald Trump, as it appears in that passage, is in every paragraph of the Times report. When Donald Trump went around the room to get everyone's opinion before finally announcing his decision, he got absurd responses from everyone there except Vice President Vance. His CIA director, according to the New York Times, offered no opinion on whether to proceed. His always incompetent White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, according to the New York Times, quote, told Mr. Trump that if he felt he needed to proceed for America's national security, then he should go ahead. It is exactly the kind of spineless, mindless counsel you imagine the most ignorant president in history, who has chosen his cabinet and his advisors for their weakness and for their blind and stupid loyalty, would get. When it was J.D. Vance's turn, the Times reports, Mr. Vance, whose disagreement with the whole premise was well established, addressed the president. "You know, I think this is a bad idea, but if you want to do it, I'll support you." There will be more reporting like that for years and years to come, and most of the people in those meetings, in those rooms, will be lying for years to come to try to extricate themselves from Donald Trump's decision to start a war for no reason, to achieve nothing in that war, and to then issue the threat, "A whole civilization will die tonight." Think about how stupid you have to be to think that that is even possible. We dropped two atomic bombs on Japan, and that civilization did not die. Thousands and thousands of people died, men, women, children, babies, grandmothers, grandparents, but bombs, even nuclear bombs, cannot kill a whole civilization, and Donald Trump doesn't know that. With 88 minutes left on his absurd deadline of 8 p.m. tonight, Donald Trump announced what Iran is tonight calling Donald Trump's surrender in his war with Iran. Donald Trump said, subject to the Islamic Republic of Iran agreeing to the complete, immediate, and safe opening of the Strait of Hormuz, I agree to suspend the bombing and attack of Iran for a period of 2 weeks. So, in exchange for the Strait of Hormuz going back to the way it was the day before Donald Trump's war, Donald Trump is willing to stop his war. And so his war has accomplished nothing tonight. Another way of keeping the Strait of Hormuz open would have been to not have his war. Donald Trump said, "We received a 10-point proposal from Iran, and I believe it is a workable basis on which to negotiate." Iran is saying tonight that their 10-point proposal as a basis for Donald Trump to negotiate is a great victory for Iran and a surrender for Donald Trump, because it means, among many other things, that Iran remains in full control of the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran has agreed to open the strait as long as Donald Trump's war has stopped. So Donald Trump's war in Iran failed to achieve anything that Prime Minister Netanyahu promised him they would achieve when he urged Donald Trump to start this war. Tonight, Donald Trump and his bombs and his missiles have created a lot of explosions in Iran that he and his childish staff have turned into what they considered very funny, playful war videos. And Donald Trump destroyed at least one university and a girls' school. He destroyed a lot of structures, a lot of buildings, a lot of homes. He killed Iran's supreme leader on the first day, only to have him instantly replaced by his son as supreme leader. And Donald Trump did not achieve regime change in Iran. Japan and Germany suffered much more damage during World War II, and they rebuilt immediately and quickly joined the strongest economic powers in the world as equals. Bombs do not produce permanent change. Bombs cannot kill a whole civilization. And so a whole civilization will not die tonight. But Donald Trump's war crime of threatening such terror, the only person in control of nuclear weapons who has ever promised such terror, is a moral stain that will live in the pages of our American history forever. That will not die. That will be with us forever. The stain of Donald Trump. Leading off our discussion tonight is Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland. He's a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee and Appropriations Committee. Senator, what has Donald Trump accomplished with his war?
Well, first, Lawrence, you're right. This is a stain that will be with us for a very long time. And all for nothing. In fact, we now have set the region on fire. We have lost 13 American service members, hundreds of American service members wounded, thousands of people, innocent civilians throughout the region killed, prices going up, the American taxpayers paying $2 billion a day, and all for nothing, as you point out, because at the end of the day, what Iran is supposedly pledged, according to Donald Trump, and there's some question about this, is to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, which, as you pointed out, was open before he started the war. So it's very clear what happened here. You know, Prime Minister Netanyahu said a few weeks ago that he'd been waiting 40 years to launch this attack on Iran. It just turns out he finally found an American president, Donald Trump, stupid enough and reckless enough to actually do it. And so here we are, and we are less safe, not more safe because of it.
And so the AP is reporting tonight that Iran will be able to charge fees for passing through the Strait of Hormuz. This is part of Donald Trump's agreement with Iran. They'll be able to charge fees. Oman and the other side of the strait will also be able to charge fees. And Iran will use the money they now collect, they will now be able to collect from passage through the strait to start rebuilding Iran. And prior to Donald Trump's war, Iran was collecting nothing for going through the strait. And so not only did Donald Trump make passage through the strait impossible, thereby skyrocketing the price of oil, now everything moving through the Strait of Hormuz will now cost more, and Iran will be collecting fees, apparently, that will increase the cost of everything that passes through there.
Well, that's right, Lawrence. Look, the biggest winner from this war has actually been Putin and Russia, because not only did we drive up the price of oil and land Putin more profits to fuel his war against the Ukrainian people, we also dropped we waived the sanctions on the transport of Russian oil. So they're the big winner. But as you point out, Iran, if it's able to charge these toll fees, and that's certainly part of Iran's 10-point plan, then at the end of the day, they will be making more revenue through passage through the straits than they were before. So it's just one more example about how, after all of this, we are worse off, not better off. And when I say we, I mean the American people, but I also mean people throughout the region and the world.
So if this was a war for the Strait of Hormuz, which is what it now appears to be. That was the final point for Donald Trump. As long as you could open the strait, the war could end. If this was a war for the Strait of Hormuz, Iran has won that war. They've emerged from that war in control of the strait and charging fees to go through it.
Well, that's right. I mean, this is why the statements coming out of Iran have declared victory for themselves. And look, I mean, Iran obviously has taken a hit to its military facilities, but Lawrence, nobody ever doubted that the United States could, use our overwhelming military force to hit certain Iranian targets. That was never in question. The question is, for what purpose, at what risk, and at what cost? And the Trump administration could never articulate a reason why we were doing this. Netanyahu has his own reasons for why he wants to do this, but the Trump administration could never articulate that. And of course, it's come at great costs in lives and treasure, and has, again, the risks has made us less safe, not more safe. So at the end of the day, Donald Trump has made the United States of America and all of our people worse off because of his reckless actions, because he finally, did what Bibi Netanyahu had been looking for a long time. Somebody stupid enough to do this.
Senator Chris Van Hollen, thank you very much for starting off our coverage tonight.
Thanks, Lawrence.
And coming up, our next guest says that Donald Trump should be impeached by the House of Representatives, removed from office by the United States Senate. Democratic Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts will join us next. Today, Pope Leo, in a rare statement in English, so Donald Trump could understand him, he directed a statement at Donald Trump that tried to convince Donald Trump to not go through with his threatened war crimes today against Iran.
Asking all people of goodwill to search always for peace and not violence, to reject war, especially a war which many people have said is an unjust war, which is continuing to escalate and which is not resolving anything. Let's remember especially the innocent, children, the elderly, the sick, so many people who have already become or will become victims of this continued warfare. To remind all that attacks on civilian infrastructure is against international law, but that it is also a sign of the hatred, the division, the destruction that the human being is capable of, and we all want to work for peace.
Also today, our next guest, Democratic Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts, who has voted twice to stop Donald Trump's illegal war in Iran, said, quote, "We have a warmonger in the White House. He has threatened war crimes on an apocalyptic scale and appears eager to commit them. The House and Senate must return to session. The House must pass articles of impeachment, and then the Senate must vote to convict and remove the president, or the cabinet and vice president, with congressional concurrence, must invoke the 25th Amendment and remove Trump. His threats cannot be dismissed as mere rhetoric. This is as grave a moment as the world has faced in the nuclear era." Joining us now is Democratic Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts. Senator, thank you very much for joining us tonight. What is your reaction to Donald Trump, as Iran puts it, surrendering now and stopping his war, leaving Iran in control of the Strait of Hormuz?
Yeah, Donald Trump has surrendered, not the Iranians. And what he has been doing over the last several days is an impeachable offense. He has threatened a genocide against a nation. He has threatened to end a civilization. He has threatened to use nuclear weapons against a country that does not have nuclear weapons. All of these are impeachable offenses, and he must be brought to justice. The House and Senate should be brought back into session. There should be articles of impeachment brought against him by the Democrats in the House of Representatives. We need to make Donald Trump accountable for what he has just done in the name of the American people. And I think this is going to be a defining moment for the Congress, for the American people. We cannot allow Donald Trump, in control of nuclear weapons, to be invoking this madman theory of the destruction of a civilization in the name of the American people without him being brought to accountability. The impeachment process must begin.
We have reports tonight of over 50 House Democrats agreeing with you on this, over 20 Senate Democrats agreeing with you on exactly this. I want to read you the one statement we have about this from a Senate Republican, and that's Senator Lisa Murkowski. Every other Senate Republican has avoided saying a word about it. She said, "The president's threat that a whole civilization will die tonight cannot be excused away as an attempt to gain leverage in negotiations with Iran. This type of rhetoric is an affront to the ideals of our nation, has sought to uphold and promote around the world for nearly 250 years. It undermines our longstanding role as a global beacon of freedom and directly endangers Americans both abroad and at home." But the rest of your Republican Senate colleagues are absolutely silent, along with the Republican Speaker of the House, who did not say one word about this today.
My Republican colleagues are spineless. They are in a witness protection program. It's almost like the invasion of the body snatchers. You look at them, they look like the same human beings, but inside it just MAGA control, Trump control. They just don't have the courage to stand up when something which is clearly a violation of everything that our country is supposed to stand for is being compromised by Donald Trump. And the question is, for them, it's 40 days later. Are we better off today than we were 40 days ago? No. The Iranian army now controls the Straits of Hormuz and the price of oil for the world. And they can charge a fee for every ship which is going through. Do we control the uranium? No, we do not. The Iranian army still controls the enriched uranium that could hold the world hostage. Are the Iranian people free? No, they're terrified of our country, that we would blow up their bridges, their schools, their civilization. And has there been regime change? No, there has not. All we have is Ayatollah Senior replaced by Ayatollah Junior. So all of this has occurred in the last 40 days without a peep from the Republican leadership in our country. And there is something fundamentally wrong with our democracy when Donald Trump can threaten the use of nuclear weapons to destroy a civilization, and the Republican Party refuses to respond at all. And the American people are going to pay an Iran war tax every day they go to the pump. It's Trump at the pump. It's up $1 a gallon. It's not going away. We just have a 2-week reprieve, and it's going to ripple right through our economy. And ultimately, the voters are going to be coming with pitchforks for Republican House and Senate members this election in November.
Massachusetts Senator Ed Markey, thank you very much for joining our coverage tonight.
Thank you.
And coming up, the top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee says he does not trust, quote, the narcissistic madman to be the commander-in-chief. Congressman Adam Smith joins us next. Trump voter and former Trump confidant Tucker Carlson said that people working for Donald Trump should stop him today from attacking Iran, and anyone in the chain of command should refuse to carry out an order from Donald Trump on attacking Iran. Today, Congressman Adam Smith, the top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, posted this: "I do not trust Donald Trump to be in charge of the might of the United States." Joining us now is Congressman Adam Smith of Washington. He is the top-ranking Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee with jurisdiction over the Defense Department and the armed services. Congressman, your reaction to where Donald Trump's war stands tonight?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different layers to it that are problematic. I mean, the war itself, in any sort of tactical, strategical sense, is a disaster. Basically, we have not accomplished any of the significant goals: stopping their nuclear program, stopping their ballistic missile program, stopping their support for terrorism. Iran survives. We've inflicted a horrible cost on the region and the world. And so all of that is in a bad place. I'm grateful for the 2-week ceasefire. It could be so much worse if Donald Trump carried out his threats. Of course, we didn't really get anything for the ceasefire. Iran has said they will open the strait, but it's not entirely clear that they will. But the bigger issue is the one you talked about. The threats and the things that Donald Trump has said, whether he carried them out or not, disqualify him as commander-in-chief of the military. The damage they have done to our country, I mean, there's no way to fix this in the short term or even the medium term. To threaten to erase an entire civilization, to gleefully talk about all the civilian targets that he is going to bomb, I mean, that is just a horrific way. Well, it's a horrific way for anyone to do anything, but certainly for the president of the United States. So, and I've heard some analysis of this where people, well, you know, he was trying to threaten to accomplish. Please, people, no matter where you're at, there's nothing remotely normal about this. I mean, to analyze this as if this was some sort of strategic discussion that Donald Trump had, this was the ravings of a homicidal maniac that led us nowhere, basically. So some way, some method, and I don't know how, because we need Republicans to actually wake up and care about their country more than they do about their loyalty to Donald Trump. But we have to focus on reining in the power of Donald Trump on this and in, gosh, everything else that he does.
So former Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's no longer in office, she has awakened. Today she said 25th Amendment, not a single bomb is dropped on America. We cannot kill an entire civilization. This is evil and madness. And the Speaker of the House remained absolutely silent on this today.
Yeah, I never thought I'd be in a position not just to agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene and Tucker Carlson, but to feel like there's really nothing to add. Like they covered it quite well. I mean, the only thing I would add is on the Speaker Johnson point, nobody has been more of a sycophantic enabler than Mike Johnson. And not just for Donald Trump, but the destruction he's done to Congress. I mean, it all fits the pattern of Trump trying to eliminate any sort of check on his power, but to abdicate responsibility in Congress, it's a huge problem. And I hope other members of Congress tell Mike Johnson to change his course.
Congressman Adam Smith, thank you very much for joining our coverage tonight.
Thanks, Lawrence.
And coming up, the era of the illegal order is now upon us, and the American military is facing that possibility every day. Tucker Carlson advising people today in the American military to refuse to carry out Donald Trump's orders. That's next. Donald Trump's former confidant, Tucker Carlson, spoke directly to White House staff on his show, saying, if you work in the White House or in the U.S. military, now is the time to say no, absolutely not, and say it directly to the president, no. I'll resign. I'll do whatever I can do legally to stop this because this is insane, and if given the order, I will not carry it out. Margaret Donovan, an Army veteran and former captain in the Judge Advocate General's Corps, writes, Trump's outrageous statements gravely threaten our military professionals' bedrock moral and legal principles, ones enshrined in the law of war that they've been trained to follow their entire careers. Joining us now, Margaret Donovan, an Army veteran and former captain in the Judge Advocate General's Corps. She's also a former federal prosecutor. Also with us, Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, retired commander of the U.S. Army in Europe. And going by rank here, we begin with General Hertling. General, I want to get your reaction to what has been achieved in Donald Trump's war.
First of all, going by rank's a bad move, Lawrence. You should have gone by lawyer requirements, and she would always be advising me. But what I would say is not much has been achieved. In fact, it's been a turnback. We see the 10 points that Iran has provided to the Pakistani interlocutors, and there are a whole lot of what they've been doing and then some to counter what Mr. Trump has attempted to achieve in this conflict. And what we've seen from the very beginning is there was very little strategic objectives in the first place, and those that were there continually changed throughout the operation.
Margaret Donovan, this situation is surely unprecedented for the American military. There has never been any examples of illegal orders were always coming somewhere down the ranks. That it was never something where it was coming out of the Oval Office directly, as we have seen. What do people in the military need to know? What is the refresher course, as it were, that applies to the lessons that we're learning now during this Trump war?
Well, first of all, pretty extraordinary that people like you and I and Tucker Carlson are just making pleas on TV to the United States military to follow orders. It's quite a place that we found our country in when we have a commander in chief who's acting as he has been. But baseline, soldiers are required to follow orders. That's how the military works. Orders are presumed lawful unless it is a blatantly unlawful order. And what we have seen over the past several days are textbook examples of blatantly unlawful orders. I do want to say, of course, threatening to take out civilian infrastructure for no military purpose, threatening annihilation of an entire civilization, that's something that everybody has correctly identified as blatantly unlawful and not something anybody in the military could lawfully follow. But also just making those threats is illegal as well. And I just want to highlight that here quickly. The additional Protocol 1 to the Geneva Conventions, which is basically mirrored in the Department of Defense Law of War Manual, also prohibits threats, and for good reason. One, civilians are not negotiating chips. They are civilians, they are innocents. They should not be used as a negotiating chip in warfare. Two, it sends people into a panic when you threaten their civilization, both Iranians and the United States. And three, when the United States starts making threats that we are going to use some type of mass lethal force for a mass casualty event, that is going to prompt other nations to act against us. So while all of the apologists today want to say it was just rhetoric or it was a negotiating tactic, while breathing a sigh of relief, other nations don't know that. And so when you ramp up the volume like that, and we are a nuclear capability, you are putting America at risk of other countries acting against us because they are going to take the commander-in-chief at his word. So there are a multitude of reasons why the threats are just as illegal as the acts themselves, and soldiers would be wise to remember their oaths and call a JAG officer if they have questions.
General, Tucker Carlson, in his way, it's a simple description. He just says, say no, say it directly to the president if you're that high up. Say, I'll resign, I'll do whatever I can to legally stop this because this is insane. And if you give the order, I will not carry it out. Is it as conceptually, anyway, as simple as that? Even though your language in a moment like that might be different?
No, it's not, Lawrence, and I'll provide some examples. The first thing, and I'll back up with what Margaret just said too, what the president was suggesting is that the United States will be committing genocide. The attempt was to wipe out an entire Persian population. Even that should give everyone that's listening to him pause. And I don't understand why there's a difference between left and right on that basic concept. But when you talk about commanders being given orders, they have three loyalties. They have a loyalty to the oath that they pledge. They also have a loyalty to the commander that they work for, as long as that commander is given legal orders, like the commander-in-chief, which apparently he was not. But the third loyalty is to soldiers, the people that are under their command. An officer, Margaret or myself could resign or submit our retirement papers when we get an illegal order. Soldiers can't do that. So one of the requirements of a leader, an officer in the Army, is to make sure the soldiers don't commit illegal orders, and they're the buffer zone. So it isn't as easy as Tucker Carlson claims, because an officer, a commander, the CENTCOM commander, anyone else just can't say, well, I resign, I'm not doing it anymore. You have to put in retirement papers or resignations, and then you leave literally hundreds, if not thousands, of soldiers hanging in the lurch because someone needs to protect them from committing war crimes. And that's why there's a little bit of nuance in all of those statements.
And so, Margaret, what would you suggest? With the general's concept of how does your resignation and leaving protect the soldiers who are left behind, vulnerable to those orders?
Yeah, absolutely. It's difficult. You can't just resign in the military, and that does leave soldiers vulnerable. I think that my recommendation would be still don't follow an unlawful order, but really we should just reflect that this is a completely unfair position to put the military in. And that was the point of the Just Security piece that my co-author and I published. The military should not be making these choices. Congress should be removing an incoherent and a dangerous commander in chief. Those are the people who have the responsibility to make the correction here. We should not be asking the average American soldier to make these extremely consequential decisions. This is Congress's job to act and fix this.
Margaret Donovan and General Mark Hertling, thank you very much for joining us on this important coverage tonight.
Thank you, Lawrence.
That is tonight's Last Word.